33-story hotel and condo project.
I'd probably be
okay,
like
that. Stop. Tap.
This is a plan by the community for the community.
This one here. Show me.
No problem, Ken. Thanks for having me.
It's Kent Molgat for Kelowna Now. And we're joined by Johannes Sofer, the manager of real estate services at the City of Kelowna. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, my pleasure, Ken.
So we saw earlier this week the latest Lakefront acquisition. Mm-hmm. And maybe you're more used to this than me, but when I see that, you know, it's $4.4 million.
Yeah.
When you pace it off, you know, it's like $40,000 per foot, perhaps,
yeah.
of lakefront. That's got to sting. I mean, these are precious tax dollars, and to get a little bit of beach, it's a big price tag.
Yeah, waterfront property is valuable. The one thing I will point out, they're not tax dollars. So the majority of that $4.4 million was developer cost monies. So when a development goes ahead, there's a small portion that goes towards park acquisitions in the future. So right. 89% of that $4.4 million was paid for by the development community.
Right. Comes out of development cost charges as development happens, which works out well because with development, you need more parks.
Correct. So if I can just backtrack a little bit
sure.
in terms of how we got to that acquisition, let's say.
Right.
So every 15, 20 years, the city reviews what's called the official community plan. It's setting the long-term vision for the future. What we value as a community, what areas we want to see growth in, what type of growth we want to see. Based on that, the outcome of the official community plan, we get a sense for how our population is going to grow over the next 15 or 20 years. We have a mandate right now, about 2.2 hectares of land that we want to acquire for every 1,000 people that are moving to our community.
So you actually have a formula. For X number of people, you need X amount of parkland for them to be happy.
For them to be happy, I mean, there's ratios throughout the province, but the idea is that definitely as our community grows, we want to make sure that our park assets and resources, they match or meet that growth.
Right. Now, is that for us to be a park-rich community, or are we just fitting into the mix of what most urban areas have?
Well, I think if you'd ask most people, I think we are seen as a very park-rich community. There's lots of ways to measure. If you take into account natural open spaces like Knox Mountain Park and Mission Creek Greenway and Okanagan Mountain Regional Park, those are huge areas. But actual active parks, we have a lot of waterfront active parks. We have a lot of like sports fields, Mission Sports Complex, the Rutland Sports Fields, the Glenmore Sports Fields that are under development. So there's a lot of active parks that are, with playgrounds, things like that are huge amenities to the community.
Right. So, but this formula that you have has been discussed and agreed upon as a good way to sort of stay ahead of that curve. Right?
That's right. Yeah. So when we've got our 2.4 hectares, we're trying to get for every 1,000 residents. I believe the current official community plan that's currently under development right now, we're projecting 50,000 additional residents by 2040. So that's about 120 hectares of land or 300 acres of parkland that we want to acquire over the next 20 some odd years.
Right.
So what we do actually, those 300 acres of land, we'll actually break down and determine specific properties that we want to target based on where they're located, based on their features, based on adjacent land uses, things of that nature.
Right.
And then we determine what the approximate value of those acquisitions is going to be.
Right.
So we've got 300 acres and a big number that we need to acquire of park.
Right.
And then for each of those development units, all those people need to live in houses, those 50,000 people, or units, whether they're rental or permanent residents. As a developer comes in and wants to build one of those units, we charge them their proportionate share of park it's going to take for those X people to live in their development.
So out of that 300 acres over that time period that you're going to try to acquire, how much of that is already, you have a pretty good idea of exactly what it is, and how much of it will unfold, through opportunities over time?
Right. So this will be a future for the 2040 OCP. It'll be a new exercise. We're talking about the current exercise.
Right.
We have currently 100 some odd specific properties by address that we are tracking for potential acquisitions as park. And then we do have some more general, as opportunities arise on a city, a neighborhood wide basis that we can make acquisitions to if unique properties arise, but the majority of them are property specific that we are targeting.
But occasionally, if an opportunity arises that wasn't identified within the plan, but it sort of meets the goals, you can bring that in?
Yes, if the resources are available, we do have some flexibility on that as well.
So do you get any pushback when people see, I know you make the point that it comes out of development cost charges.
Right.
But the city does have the latitude to use that for whatever they want. I mean, it could be directed into another area. You could feed a lot of homeless people for $4.4 million.
Right.
Do people say, do we need, this pricey lake shore? Instead, we should be spending the money on something else?
I think those are two issues. So first of all, how those resources are directed. We've made commitments to the development community, Urban Development Institute, that it will be for specific purposes.
Redirecting it is not in
Redirecting it is not an option at this time, right? So that's the one issue. And the second is, frankly, the public feedback surveys, waterfront. It's a key priority both for locals and for tourism. I mean, the lake is our greatest natural resource. So we haven't had, in my capacity, despite the other challenges we're facing as a community, and they're very real challenges, and they need to be resourced. Acquisition of key properties, park properties, whether those are waterfront, whether those are neighborhood or community or citywide parks, those continue to also be a priority for the city.
Right. I often look at Peachland and think, there's a community that did things in a way that in many ways is better. It's got its own challenges, but this idea of having, you've got the beach, and you've got the road winding along, and the houses are on the other side of the road.
Right.
Is there ever an opportunity for the city to have it both ways, to buy up lakefront property and then you could sell back a residential property on the other side of a road? We've crossed that bridge already. The way Kelowna developed just doesn't allow for any of that.
I have heard anecdotally that our lake is back in the 20s, 30s. There was flooding. There were significant concerns about the lake, and at that time, Lakeshore was actually on the lakeshore, much as like you might see in Peachland.
Yeah.
As dam controls and flood mitigation controls came in, we developed a natural boundary or a natural high water mark that facilitated development on the lake side of Lakeshore Road, or that you see all the houses there now. So it is one of the things we are looking at. One of the challenges with waterfront acquisitions, and one of the unique things about the last couple of acquisitions we've made, is that they're both large properties and that they're nominally improved. So the last thing, not the last thing, but one of the things we want to avoid doing is spending $4 million and half of that being on a $8,000 mansion that we really don't need for park purposes, and having to destroy that or something of that nature, right? So opportunities where there's an old house on it, it's one older residence on a larger site, those are very, very rare, and those are ones we want to take advantage of.
Right, and doubling back to the most recent acquisition, the one on Hobson Road, perfect. It's an older structure,
right?
Not of the real value there. I don't want to put down that.
Yeah, fair enough. Property, yeah, for sure.
But the real value there is the land, and
correct.
Those are the ones that you want.
Right, and so had we not purchased that, had someone a private individual purchase that, likely because the nature of the existing improvement, they would have, likely torn that down and put a significant improvement on that. It was on our park acquisition list, so after a $2 million house goes on there, suddenly the list price goes to $6 million or $7 million, and then we're waiting another 20, 30, 40 years before that property reasonably becomes something we can pursue.
Right, so this last one's a real sort of success. It was what you had planned to do. The opportunity came up to do it, and so that's a win.
Yeah, I think from all perspectives, in terms of the rationale, the opportunity that arose, having the resources available, it really does show how that planning and the foresight put us in a position where we could actually act upon it.
And it's also right next to the Sailing Association.
Correct.
So that seems to work nicely as well. Are there any conflicts there at all?
No, so as we move forward, our intent is for the recent acquisition, to make it available or accessible to the public for next summer. So that'll require removing the house, and then discussions with the sailing club. We do want to ensure that they're not detrimentally impacted with let's say people looking for a washroom or parking or things like that. So we'll have to have some discussions definitely with them to ensure that they're accommodated as more and more public use that park.
Right. Fascinating stuff. I don't think anyone could say, hey, you guys haven't put enough thought into this. It sounds
no, definitely not. There's a lot of background work that generally people don't see.
Terrific. Yeah. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Helping us understand it better.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Johannes Soffer from the City of Kelowna, thank you, and thank you for watching Kelowna Now.